Finance and Investment Committee, meeting upstairs, in the upstairs conference room. Mr. Thomas.
Wes, you have the presentation up or you need a minute?
A minute.
Okay.
Combine the two, I think.
So today we'll be going over several items. Some of them are repeat items, and then we're going over our first budget process. So we'll have a budget presentation, obviously. And then we'll move into that finalizing with sewer and tax roll. So those are items that are, I think, really important that's going on right now with the district, especially with everything else happening with rates. And from here, some of these items will be depending on what the community wants moving forward to the full board. So that's all I have on. So yes.
It's doing here what it's doing to me on
Let the record show that we asked you to talk on your.
I know.
And you can't. More importantly, you
That's the
can't.
first time.
I know.
We have to share it.
Great.
Oh, okay, on the keyboard. Hopefully we're good.
Yep.
Good afternoon. I think this is our first budget meeting, right? So we get the budget party page for the first time this season.
Okay,
All right, so we got a lot to go through today. This is the beginning, as I mentioned, the budget process. There's a lot of material. This is, keep in mind as we go, it's the sausage making, so you're getting to see all the details now. We sent out the material and supplies list, which is, I think, 36 pages of details, so down to the $100 items. Jody's actually gonna be presenting that today. I'm gonna start off going budget to actual for the last 5 years. We're also gonna talk about OPEB. And then we get the sewer revenue on the tax roll as the last thing. So budget party page, this was new as of last year, but you know, it's still fresh, kind of, right?
Seems to be a theme.
Well, I recreated it last year, I got another creative. So first we go over budget to actual for the last 6 years. Then we're gonna go over the operating budget requests, and Jody will do that part of the presentation. After that, Mike's gonna talk about other post-employment benefits, and that's just an update of the status and the funding of the plan. And lastly, we'll talk about the sewer revenue on the tax roll.
Wes, one quick question. On our agenda, there's also a review operating budget request. Is that sandwiched in there?
That's the second one.
Okay.
Yeah. So, budget actual for the last 5 years, we're actually showing 6. Let's see here in 2022-23, we were actually 4.98% under budget. One thing I do want to mention before I kind of go into the percentages, this is everything. This is all the operational costs, including salaries and benefits. So being within 5% is pretty good. I think I'm pretty impressed by it because salaries are hard to predict, overtime, turnover, things like that. So that's a big portion of our budget. So we were under by 4.98% last year in 2024. Now that we actually have our audit financials done, we have the actual numbers for 2024. So that's what this is over here. We can see that we are actually over budget in 2024 by 1.42% or $203,000 in total. So when given a $14.3 million budget, $203,000 doesn't seem too bad. But looking at that, this shows a summary of it's like page 21 of the budget, and you can see down here in the bottom right that
I'm sorry, can we minimize the screen,
That's
please?
the top right.
There we go. So we can see the 1.42% of $203,000 down at the bottom there, and that is made up of the major variances are going to be the highlighted items. The first one worth noting is pumping was over budget by $158,000. That's totally as a result of being over budget in power costs. Pumping is the biggest portion of our power costs in the district. We were over by 150.
How about the pumping quantity?
So that's a good question.
So for last year, it was probably into 23-24, it probably mirrored 22-23 because it was the same kind of rainy-ish type season. We'll see a difference this year. But not into-
Yeah.
Budget.
Yeah, if you look, what I look at is
The quantity. Yeah, the quantity was a little bit below because of the extra little bit rain. Utility.
Director, what I always do when I look at this is I look at the water purchases. If the water purchase variance is negative, then most likely prorated, the pumping is we pump less, but our SCGD costs still went up.
Right there. So That's probably mainly a result of SDG&E cost rate increases and the solar benefits we expected to get being different than what they actually were.
General and admin, the variance was negative fiscal year 22-23, and it's positive this year. What general and admin is kind of a catch-all bucket. Can you remind me what some of those things might be that would have contributed to the variance?
Yes. Last year specifically, I remember the presentation because I just watched it today. Last year, we actually had engineers working a lot on projects. They really focused on getting the CIP done last year, which resulted in the increase in the overhead rate. And as you know, overhead directly reduces the cost of our G&A. It goes against our G&A costs. So that's what caused it to be under budget last year. This year is kind of the opposite. We just had more labor than anticipated. And I think
I know.
when I get there, let me just make sure, because I think there are actually two items to that that I'm going to mention. Yes, one, higher labor than anticipated, and the second part is we actually had more development projects built this year than we anticipated. So our development services department, we work with developers. They do a lot of projects where they actually give us deposits. They go work on the project. At the end of it, we net those costs, our costs against their deposits. If we charge more to it and we bill them more, if we didn't use all their deposit, then we refund them the rest of it. This year, we had a lot of projects that we actually ended up billing out and just had to collect again. So when we bill it, until we get the money, it becomes our expense until we bill it to them. So we had a lot of projects this year, about $60,000.
What's the lag time?
It's usually pretty good. It just depends. It's like some of them, we don't really know when they're complete and they have to be inspected and we have to go through the whole process of engineering. But we've got a pretty good process now with our accounting department reaching out to engineering and saying, hey, is this project done? And they send us the documentation. We usually bill it pretty quickly.
So is that 225 part of it is just timing, because some of that billing will get received later?
Absolutely. Okay, so moving on to the next one, transmission distribution. That's actually a result of more main breaks. It actually has $85,000 in materials as a result of main breaks. And listing off some bigger main breaks, we had a big one on Rincon in Escondido on October 23rd. It was an 18-inch main break. It was about $270,000. And last year compared to this year, we had 23 main breaks last year compared to 31 this year. Meters is under budget. That's pretty much the same story it's been for the last couple of years. We are understaffed in meters. We've got some turnover. We had one position in particular was vacant for over a year. It's not as hard to get meters anymore as it was, but we still have a delay in getting the meter supplies. So those are some of the reasons why meters is under budget by 20. Engineering, this is an interesting one this year because we actually had a project. It was Metal Arc tank number 3. It's been going on for a long time. It's kind of been up in the air about whether or not we're going to work on the project and complete it. So we had costs that went to the project. I think it was years ago, and then just here and there we had labor contributing to it. But it just kind of was up in the air about whether we're going to work on it. At the end of the year, we said, you know what, it's probably not going to happen. It's unlikely. And the other said, well, if you're not sure, we need to expense it. We got to close down and do those costs. So we actually expensed $403,000, which is why engineering ended up.
You said it was middle or
Tank number 3.
water spill.
Yeah, we have the pads all graded. We've done all the environmental clearance for it, but we never built the tank. It was always meant to be for reliability and future expansion based on demands, which obviously those demands never realized. So we never built a tank, but we always thought maybe it'll happen, but we've waited a long time and the auditors are finally saying, yeah, you gotta expense it.
And the big deal of that one is we had to go through a HCP habitat conservation plan on that one, so we have the habitat conservation plan in place, which was the majority of that expense, and then instead of spending a couple $1 million more to build a tank that we don't need, we've been just punting it this whole time.
So that is all of water, since we've already talked about G&A. So moving on to sewer. Sewer budget actual is actually under budget by 9.32% or $778,000 for fiscal year 2024. And the major reasons for that are, and there you did a total down there at $78,932. Major reasons are customer accounts. Customer accounts had $45,000 less in labor than anticipated. And they had about $51,000 less in materials and supplies, which is kind of a good thing because that means we didn't have as many door hangers for lock lists. It was for materials, door hangers and InfoSend charges. And we actually contract InfoSend to put out our door hangers for 48-hour notices. So that's why that's under budget. Engineering is actually under budget, and sewer. It's funny because they had more sewer projects this year, so they had a lot of time spent on CIP projects and sewer. So their labor is lower and they ended up being under budget for engineering. Safety and compliance, this is similar to meters, only in that it's kind of the same story. Had a lot of turnover in the department. We've done some shifting of positions. We've had vacant positions. We had to replace a position that was reclassed below a supervisor that saved us some money. So we ended up saving money in that department and being under budget. And G&A is actually under budget in sewer. This one, we had less labor than anticipated in sewer. We also had outside services was under budget by about $86,000. The biggest reason for that was that we had a sewer cost of service that we had planned on doing and just didn't have time to get to this year. So it'll be rolling forward with place. So next is just kind of the budget calendar, starting with February. Our internal process, we updated the budget with the audited 2024 numbers, so we put the actuals in the budget.
Well, since it's itemized as one, we should see if the committee members have any questions before we move on to item 2. Budget calendar. So
I'm good.
I have a question. The cost of service study, didn't we need to do a cost of service study before we implemented a rate increase?
No, well, so we didn't do a rate increase for sewer. So and we haven't done a rate increase for sewer for a while, and we're pretty healthy in sewer, so we haven't had the need to do it, but we wanted to do one this year. We were planning on doing one just in case, kind of just to review the numbers, just to make sure we were okay with our time rates. Water is really where we're feeling the pressure. The water going.
But you're absolutely right. It's required before we ever consider it.
That's why I kind of stopped myself. Sit down. Okay, any other questions on the?
I'll go back to the historical, the 6-year.
Yep.
Looks like you're consistently under budget. Which, I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah, sewer is kind of tough. You know, you get some treatment costs in there with the plant, and the plant tends to be, we try to be conservative. When I say conservative, we try to make sure we budget enough to cover our chemical costs and other things. So you'll see the metal plant tends to be a big culprit in us being under
The
budget.
last 3 years particularly, it's 9%.
Yeah.
10%.
Now, we tightened it up in 2021, actually, around COVID, so that think it's interesting, but a lot of it has to do with the like treatment costs and things like that are tough to control for sewer.
And I mean, with our plants down currently, so we'll see some big variances for portions of 24, 25.
Which will be
So I noticed in the last operating, the quarterly operating, the board package, there was more going to Encina.
Yeah.
In the winter time. No, is that right? No, it was opposite. It was in the summer. There was more going. Is it because the plant was down for?
When did the plant get shut down?
December.
December. So the plant didn't get shut down in December, so we were still production until then.
Yeah, all of our flow metrics during the actually were down this year. They showed
Well, it seemed like the flows in Encina were opposite of the season they should be increasing. So I was wondering if it had something to do with the construction in the middle or no.
We had some plant upsets, but I don't think that would have
Yeah,
contributed.
we had that phone party at the plant,
Yeah.
then we had to divert flow to Encina several times.
did you say foam party? I missed that.
Phone party. It's not the foam you want to get.
So just for some context, we're looking at this chart and the water chart, and in terms of the overall sewer budget and the overall water budget, this represents 20% of the overall budget, because this excludes treatment costs. The other excludes water purchases, which are the bulk of our budget. So can you just correct me, how much of this is the budget for sewer, and how much of the previous that we saw is the budget of water?
So water is typically about 72% water purchases. That means what you just saw was about 28%. Sewer is going to be, I don't have the chart here, but it's somewhere, you know, the percentage on the sewer chart that you're gonna show? I forgot what it is.
But we're gonna show it.
Oh, yeah, it'll actually come up during Jody's presentation.
I just wanted the context.
And I think it's pretty similar because treatment costs are a big portion of our sewer budget as well, so. Okay, moving on to the calendar. So this is just kind of what we've been working on and to give you an update. This is historical at this point. So internally, we've been working on getting the actuals up to date, so we've taken the budget file, put in the actuals. We're now working on budget requests and we're working on projections. We had the departments prepare their requests, and they were due by the end of February. And then the original meeting was scheduled for February 11th, which was what we've covered today, which is just the budget versus actual and this part of the calendar. We were gonna go over the preliminary calendar at that meeting, but this one, Jody will actually finish it off just to get our schedules in line with how we wanna, work on the next meetings. Then in March, we actually got the requests from the departments and we put them into the budget. We've done a minor reviews of them, but for the most part, what you're seeing today is, us seeing it, we've just pretty much taken it, put it into the budget. And, today's analysis, the interactive analysis with all of us. Then we're gonna start working on the future personnel payroll estimates. We'll actually be presenting those to the next finance committee meeting. And then we'll be working on the debt service forecast. And here is March 18th, where we're reviewing the operating budget requests and discussing any questions that you have today. It says O&M manager, he's absent today because he had another commitment. So Jason's kind of filling in for the questions we have for the O&M manager today.
Do the best.
And with that, that's the end of my personal presentation. I'm going to pass it on to Jody unless there are other questions. I did want to mention again that this is all the details, sausage making, so this is not set in stone. From here, we're going to be doing revisions, trying to find areas where we can reduce or cut if necessary. And any changes from now until other finance committee meetings will be brought to those meetings and discussed with you. So if we cut items, we'll say, since the last meeting, here's what we've done, and give you updates on that too. So with that, I'll pass it over to Jody. You want me to drive?
Sure.
Okay. Back to the page.
Okay, so yes, because it's so amazing, we have the budget party page once again. And here's the agenda. We're going to go over some background information. During this portion of the meeting, we'll be presenting some results of the Materials and Services Department budget request for fiscal year 25-26. A staff member is here to answer any questions you may have, or if additional detail is needed. And then we'll provide the next steps of the budget process. You can skip all this calendar information you just went over.
Here's the chart we were talking about.
Yes, what is the focus of this presentation? This slide is a chart showing the breakdown of prior year budgeted water operating expenses. Of the $54.6 million budgeted, $39.6 million is for water purchase costs, which is considered an uncontrollable cost to the district. So basically, we do not have much control over about 72% of operating costs. Then 21% of the remaining 27% are salary and benefit costs. These costs are relatively uncontrollable as well. So that leaves us with the 7% of the water budget that we will be focusing on during this presentation, materials and services.
So just to, sorry to interrupt for just a minute. So what you just saw in budget to actual included the full 27%. So we had the budget actuals for all of that. Jody's going to be showing, just talking about the 7%. That's all we've got today on the budget. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, so the 7% is basically the materials and services or water operations portion of operating budget for $3.7 million. Okay, so departments have submitted their 25-26 budget requests in a timely manner. And before we get into the results, we will demonstrate how department requests flow through to the draft budget. Starting with this section of the materials and services report that was provided to you earlier. This is actually page 5 of that report. So this report summarizes all department budget requests and is organized by department and category type. And this example shows the water treatment department budget request for materials and supplies, as well as outside services. It also shows the staff member requesting each item and whether the item is recurring. And most of the items in this report are recurring, so any one-time costs will stick out and may provide answers as to why there may be large changes. And then moving to a
I'm sorry to
smaller
interrupt
version.
just before we go on. So when it says recurring,
it's not clear how often it recurs.
Annually.
And
Okay, so this is just basically a smaller portion of the above. And we're going to also add the budget page. You can, of the water treatment department, you can see how the 63,000 total materials and supplies amount flows over to the budget page, as well as the $24,000 outside services total that flows over to the budget page. And then when you add the cost of labor and the power line item, you get a total of 679,000.
I have a question, you know, because I sit through this presentation annually. What if, not this year, of course, what if at some point you made this presentation or you made this document printable so that when you click on a figure, it opens up the page so that you can see how it rolls up. That's not something that that's something that probably Jonathan would have to get involved with, but I think that would be really helpful for board members as well as folks who sit through this presentation so that you could, you know, show the page and click on it, and then the new page pops up so that you can see, you know, how it all rolls
So,
together, how it fits together.
Hyperlinks. It goes right to the page. So,
I realize that's no small feat. I just want you to know, I'm not just saying, what if, you know, and you should be able to snap your fingers and do that. I'm not, I fully appreciate that that's a lot of work, but I think that it would be very helpful, particularly with, you know, new board members who may not have a background in finance. Might be something that would be really helpful.
So this would kind of just show the map from all the details to the summary portion.
Mhm.
So we're really gonna look at just the summary portion, get the big variances. And then from there, we're gonna drill back down so you can see what those variances would cause versus just showing all the detail for everything.
Mhm.
So next she's gonna go summary level, and then if there's a variance, we'll drill down and show you the details to it.
And that would be helpful too, so that when you click on it, so that if I want to know, well, why is that variant, or what could that possibly be? I can just click on it and it'll pop up and it'll show me.
Okay, so the $679,000 total rolls up into another summary page. Right there. And then moving on to the results of the water budget, for this summary page, we added a budget to budget comparison column on the far right. So when you compare the 24-25 budget column to the 25-26 budget column, you get these differences highlighted here. And at this point, the overall operating budget is supposed to increase by 338,000 or 2.26%. Some of the larger increases are in the transmission and distribution departments, customer accounts, buildings and grounds, and information technology departments.
I'll interrupt again just for a second. So when we put this together, we see that it's 2.26%. It really shows that everybody's using the Siemens words too. I think Scott says this all the time. We're really holding the line. We do everything we can to keep our controllable costs as low as possible. So year to year at 2.26%, I mean, that's below inflation. It's, you know, it's a really
It's
good.
been pretty consistent.
yeah,
We actually did a year where, you know,
It's too.
I think our 10-year average is 3.7 or 3.8%. So this year we're coming in at 2.26% on water, which is pretty good.
yeah, and that includes labor also.
Right now, labor's
Separate.
Yeah, it's the same, so there's no labor equation here right now.
So then you're really, obviously wholesale water costs aren't in there. These are our operational costs. So our operational costs for water, that department's going up to 2.26%.
Labor is not included.
And so these are our most controllable costs. These are our operating items. It's like that 3.7%.
So what's the average labor increase?
So we won't know that yet. We'll be bringing that to the next.
What's the kind of the historical average year to year?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know our COLA was 5.544.
We got
So you're gonna
four.
have that.
Yeah,
or it's
This
four
year, July will be 4, but I mean, last year was.
So you can use that as kind of.
But then you have to think about the PERS cost and insurance costs.
What ends up happening is a variance in labor. I don't know, I haven't seen this year's numbers yet, but historically, a variance in labor is is you're gonna have normal, promotions or step increases, colas, but then the PERS costs can swing considerably from being $100,000 super funded to having UILs
Back and forth.
17 million, so it makes all those other costs really insignificant.
So, when we first started talking about these operating budgets, we did include labor. Is that just because at that time, when you're looking at actuals, you have that information when you're looking at actuals, but we don't have the information now, so that's why. I think it would be helpful, rather than completely exclude it, to my colleague's point, perhaps, maybe including like an average, just to get a picture. Is that reasonable?
Well, the only reason we don't do that is because we don't have any information on it yet, so we're trying to do it like piece at a time. So the first piece, the puzzle materials, next committee meeting, we're gonna do labor as its own piece with CIP.
You'll see
So
all
we'll actually dig into labor and we'll see, all
Don't
the
forget that I asked the question at that point, when I say that.
Right, I'll make sure he brings it up.
So you'll see all the details to labor at the next one, and then we'll see all the details to CIP. And then the following meeting, we just see it like all together, so it's just done piece by piece and then combined at the end, so.
All right, we'll make a note on the party page.
Okay, so next we are going to drill down into each one of those large increases to show what's causing them. Starting with the $99,000 increase in transmission and distribution. This increase is primarily due to increases in materials and supplies and outside repairs of 69,000 and 29,000. Drilling down even further, the $69,000 increase is primarily due to that calibration tool for transmitters line item that was added. Would you like to add?
Yeah. I'm waiting, I'm sorry. I'm excited.
First, it's non-recurring, so that's worth noting, right?
Yes, and that's exactly what's point. Yeah, it is not recurring. So this is a calibration tool. So this year we realized that the pressure transmitters that we have throughout the district at tanks and pressure stations and flow control centers and everything, they've never been calibrated. And we found that through an error at the Veracruz tank. Went out there, found out we had like a 2-foot elevation error. They went out to correct it. They reset it and it still had a 1-foot error. So basically we realized, okay, these have never been calibrated, and this is simply a one-time purchase for the tool to go out and calibrate all this equipment that we have. So our mechanical electrical staff will be taking this tool right now in the field and doing all that calibration analysis, and I expect that from that we are going to have to we'll find that we're probably gonna have to replace a number of these. So probably the following year we'll probably have some
Yeah,
costs.
separate capital acquisition list or budget for high priced items, like most agencies, if it's over 2,500 or 5,000.
10, right? 10 is
So our policy is 10,000. Sorry,
Okay.
it's 10,000 and greater than a 2-year useful life.
So this appears on like a capital list.
We're not gonna capitalize this tool. It wouldn't be.
It depends on material list, so it's a
basically.
material list.
Okay, and just
Uh,
agencies do it
And,
different ways.
And one of the things advantage of this is that knowing the proper elevation tanks, we could be over pumping or under pumping. So it's gonna have
I
a.
can find out.
So
it's
that's
gonna
an
have a
excellent question.
systemic-
Yeah.
And since this was put into the operational budget, like I said, these are first requests.
Yeah.
So this is something we could go through and say, does this have a useful life greater than 2 years, which it may.
And typically the high priced items
Yeah.
are kind of a capital budget thing.
So this may be something we actually move over to CIP, and you may see at the next meeting if we decide that it qualifies as a capital asset. So it's a great question.
Yeah, that's good. I'm okay with that. Any questions on that item? So the other pipe and supplies, so this is an increase from this year to next year because we've been getting letters from all of our vendors saying because of the tariffs that have been discussed, the vendors have been telling us that prices are going to increase, and this is just in response to that. Of course, we don't know where that all ends, but from a budgeting perspective, we're going sort of worst case, and that's really what this is.
Is it mostly steel? Driven by
Yeah,
steel?
valves, copper, all those.
Great, Canada.
Yeah. It is what it is. That's what this is in response to.
Thank you, Jody.
Okay, so that $29,000 increase is primarily due to this emergency repairs for asphalt and concrete line item. It has increased by approximately 50,000 or 50,000 actually
Yeah,
compared to the
so,
prior year.
so another reoccurring item, as you know, we have asphalt and concrete repair for emergency breaks. So like Jody said, it's increasing 50,000, and that's just based on the trend that we see. I think as the general manager has told you, we've had a lot of breaks this year, I think one a month for out there on the Tres Amigos, and we've also had some substantially large ones, the one out of Rincon, the one on Red Wing, and so all of those. That this is just in response to those breaks and also just standard material increases in oil, which is the base for, you know, so asphalt. So that's what this is.
So the next large increase we will drill down into is the $45,000 increase for customer accounts. That increase is primarily due to increases in outside services and uncollectible accounts. The increase in outside services is due to various increases in contracts related to customer payment processing. And then the uncollectible accounts is projected to increase to be more in line with actual amounts from prior years. And the good news is it's looking like for 24-25 that debt expense is going to be lower than the actuals for compared to 23-24. And then for the $50,000 increase in buildings and grounds department, that increase is to outside services primarily due to increases in janitorial services and solar repairs and modernization planning.
So that's something, sorry, go ahead.
Do we use a contractor for remote facilities? For like landscape maintenance and stuff like that?
Do we outsource landscaping? We have one
Yeah.
landscaper.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we use outside services to supplement
Okay,
the one in-house.
so he kind of looks after
Yes.
the contract services.
Yes, exactly.
So in the solar modernization plan that she mentioned, that's actually we're using Terra Verde for that, and they're gonna be looking at our solar panels that are on the carports. They're old at this point, I think they're 2007, so they're almost 20 years old,
Nearing end of life.
and their production is in question, so we're having Terra Verde take a look at it and give us our options, whether we should be replacing it ourselves, possibly looking at a PPA as well, the same way we did with the reservoirs. So it's a study for now to tell us what our options are going to be for modernizing our solar panels on the carports.
Well, the original contract for it, did it say, was it a PPA?
No.
We actually purchased that.
We got a grant, so it's like,
Yeah, now production's down to 25%, so it's
Well,
hitting that point
and you
where.
didn't clean as often as you
Yep,
should and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and so we're spending money to clean and maintain them, but there's that cost benefit we're trying to,
Return, yeah.
that we need to look into, yeah, what do we do?
And then the $119,000 increase in IT, there are a few things that are causing this $131,000 increase in materials and supplies. 66,000 has been transferred in from other O&M budgets to the IT materials and service supplies budget for SCADA related costs. And then within the IT budget, 74,000 was transferred from outside services category into materials and supplies, again for SCADA related costs. And then, so those two items are what is primarily causing the $131,000 increase. But then there's also another $62,000 in increased costs related to various existing licensing fees that are currently budgeted for in outside services. And so that $62,000 increase and the $66,000 that was transferred in from other departments is what is causing the bottom line increase of $119,000.
So this is really moving costs around. We had SCADA costs in other departments, and really since it's being now centralized in IT, that's why she's saying a lot of it shifted from operations into the IT department. moving from outside services to the SCADA, which costs materials and supplies. That might be a function of this being the initial request. We need to analyze that again and determine if they are actually outside services. Because we have a SCADA account in materials and supplies, but if it's outside service related, it'll be moved back to the outside service line. So again, this is the initial pass, but that's what's causing that
How about cybersecurity? Doesn't just show up and shows up in,
in IT. And we do have a budget for that. Usually,
and did we got a grant for that, didn't we?
yeah, we got like $90,000, right?
Yeah, and Jody's right, some of the licensing fees for some of our vendors has more than doubled.
Yeah.
And in all of these areas, I've been talking with Matthias and, what are our options? And some of them, there is no option. Not that we're not keeping an eye out, but some of them are, there's no other option than this particular vendor for this particular service.
So is the IT split 50-50 between sewer and water?
5149, yeah.
Also, the committee and the board will see SCADA expenses increase because we're in the middle of modernization. Our old SCADA format is no longer supported.
How old is it?
Is old Wonderware, I believe. So,
Very familiar.
yeah. So, and are we going to Ignite now? Is that, do you remember?
Yeah, I think it's Insight.
Insight, sorry, not Ignite.
It's Insight
How old's
platform.
the system?
Oh, it was originally built before I started here in 2005.
It's way overdue.
Yeah. So you're gonna see an increase, and we've been band-aiding it and updating it, but now it's not supported and our system's grown too large for the original software.
And you might remember, I think our largest new request last year was for a SCADA CIP project that was around $8 million. So we're,
I suffered through 3 SCADA upgrade projects in my career.
I don't know.
So you have more for you, actually, tell us the lessons learned. First. Look, so and Cena's doing the same thing, they're doing their SCADA project and I see the.
So we're gonna
cost.
get hit twice. We're gonna hit
Yeah.
with ours and theirs.
And don't worry, Water Authority, I think is doing it too.
Yeah, just you're hitting that time frame now where everything is unsupported, the
Yeah.
hardware it's more expensive to
And
repair than
The
to
time is
replace.
getting shorter
I'll give you
between systems.
Sure.
a real example. The numbers aren't exact, but the scale is, Matthias told me that we had a board that went out of our old system. They had to buy one on eBay for like $2,000, but the new boards only cost like $200. It's some type of scale like that. My numbers
I
aren't
did the
correct.
same thing. We had VAX workstations. This is before PCs were powerful enough to run a SCADA system. This is up in the early 90s. And we were actually going on eBay and
Buying parts.
buying parts
Yeah.
for these computers.
Some things never change.
All right, so back to you, Jody.
Okay, so moving on to wastewater, focus for the wastewater budget. This slide shows breakdown of total 24-25 wastewater operating expenses. 17.6 million, the total is comprised of projected EWA expenses of 4.4, salary and benefit costs of approximately 8.1. And so the focus will be on the remaining 29%. Or $5.1 million of this total budget, which includes the middle art plant and other sewer operations.
So this is supposed to answer that percentage question that we asked in the last one. So we were actually covering
40,
I
39.
think we were covering all of this, right? And the budget to actuals. But yeah. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so next slide, for the overall results of the sewer budget to date, the budget comparison column that's been added on the far right shows that the total change to the sewer budget is 338,000 or 2.6%. For internal analysis purposes, this change does not include EWA disposal. The change in budget for disposal. This change is primarily within 2 departments, middle art plant for $184,000 and IT again for $104,000. So the large increase in the metal art plant is due to a proposed increase in chemicals of $125,000. So these costs are what could be considered uncontrollable costs. So if we were to take that increase out, previous overall increase of 2.6% would actually come down to about 1.2%.
So yeah, so that's, if we take this 184, which is pretty much, chemical and treatment costs, this goes down to 1.2. So our operational costs are really been, held, so they, I'd say.
Holding the line?
There's guys have done a good job holding the line.
Chemical costs affected by the tariffs.
I don't know. Are they?
I'm not aware of that. I think the primary cost increases, as you know, we're going from sodium hypochlorite to, or
Yes.
we're going from gas to sodium hypochlorite, and it is more expensive chemical. It's really just that.
That was gonna be my question. Thank you for answering that, but it's safer.
Yes.
Safer. Mhm.
Yeah.
Which is why we did it.
Yep. Never worries.
Not only safe for the employees, but safe for the community.
Next, the IT department's increase of $104,000. Very similar to water, there are a few things that are causing this $119,000 increase to materials and supplies. As well as the bottom line increase of $104,000. So again, $53,000 has been transferred in from other O&M budgets to the IT materials and supplies budget for SCADA related costs. And then within IT, $72,000 was transferred from outside services into materials and supplies for more SCADA related costs. And these two items are what is primarily causing the $119,000 increase to materials and supplies. And then there's another $57,000 increase in costs related to various existing licensing fees that are currently budgeted for in outside services. So this $57,000 increase and the amount that was transferred in from other departments of $53,000 are what is causing the overall $104,000 increase to IT.
Okay, so the mayor's kind of questions first, I think, so. Those are the budget requests and the major variances and the changes into. So we say 2.26% or 2.6% on water and like 1.2% on sewer.
Is there a way to, conceptually, is there a way to look at, like programmatically, like a program, how much are we spending on it now versus last year, like asset management?
Yeah, so one of the things I'm working on with Thomas and Eric is actually making that system better. So Ed he had an Excel spreadsheet that he would use that would look very similar to the, we have one with the detail, I'm trying to think of the last time we showed the detail. The materials and supplies, they get this sheet. So this is the one that's like 36 pages long. It's like 19 pages for water, 18 pages for sewer, whatever. This shows all the detail. It's all the requests from all the supervisors. And we have this, we do it annually. Ed used to take last year's spreadsheet, and when he get this year's request, he'd put it in a separate column and he would like analyze each one and work the bottom.
Slice it up.
Yeah.
Program.
Right, so he would say, where are all the, major increases and what's the total increase? We're actually working with IT right now to develop a report, so we can, because we have 6 years worth of history now since we started using our financial system as the budget prep software. Instead of using Excel, we actually transitioned about 6 years ago to GEM. So we have it all now in a database. So we're able to sort of slice and dice and create things like that, working in analytics. And Eric and I are working on creating something, hopefully for next year, we'll be able to come forward and say, program that 2.6%, where are the major changes there? And that way, when he gets requests from his staff, because he does have the largest staff in the district, we can, it's easier for him to like say, well, why is your increase from this to this last year, this year, instead of putting it in Excel, putting up different, spreadsheets and stuff.
We lost my own question. I'll come back.
That's what I do. I just talk until you forget.
Oh, I know. Remember, you reminded me. I'm talking. Your budgeting software, is it a commercial software?
It's a Harris product. It's GEM because it's an old product,
But
but
it looks exactly like what branch you'll use. I guess a lot of agencies.
yeah.
GEMS is pretty popular.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's pretty affordable.
It's not the most user friendly.
No, it's having deja vu over it. It looks identical to it.
So funny story, I came from OTI, I worked there for 10 years before I came here. And when I started at OTI, we had a Harris product that was GEMS or older, right?
Yeah.
And we transitioned to Inform Gold product, it was a Tyler product called Inform Gold. when I came here, I was like, "Wait, it looks like I've seen this before. Like, this is very familiar, like entering the next screen name and stuff." And I was like, it's the same thing, just like 5 years newer or whatever than what I was using before. I mean, our system at this point is 20-something years old. I think it was almost 14 years old when I got here, and I've been here for almost 13, so.
Are you looking at newer stuff?
There have been many conversations, but we have so many different softwares within the district. Nothing's integrated, most of it's interface.
It takes a lot of labor to,
It's a huge effort.
yeah.
It'd be a huge effort for very little like change really, because we have all the financial reports we need and stuff. It's not like holding us back at this point. The one thing I would say that might result in us converting the financial system would be our billing system. So if our North Star, which is it's just as old, if that customer facing billing system became an issue where there was something much more user friendly for our customer service folks, that might drive a change in finance, but.
Now there's been a lot of talk about AI and being able to share unstructured data between separate systems. Is that, are you seeing anything?
I don't know if we're anywhere near that. That would be a IT question when we didn't have.
Yeah.
I've actually talked to Matthias about that, and he said, yeah, there's possibilities, but the errors are still pretty
I think you
fine.
mentioned that.
Yeah. But it's gonna get there sooner or later, and then that will make conversion in the future much easier, much faster.
Yeah, our most expensive software is our Maximo product, and I say most expensive, it's our most robust as well as most expensive. It does our labor reporting, it does our project accounting, it does all our work orders, it does our field work and stuff like that. So that's our sort of our heartbeat of our software.
They're seeing the mess.
So, and it's not the same as our financial package, so that's really the one, if that one ever got outdated, we need to go like change that, then we might do a full ERP.
Yeah, I have to say, we're in the middle of a data migration for GIS. That's a major data change that we're in the middle of. And next year, we're scheduled to do an upgrade on Maximo. So once this data is migrated and secure, I think that's when we can look at some software optimization or some sort of an AI interface. But that's sort of a cart before the horse right now, that conversation.
Well, and to Harris's credit or Jim's credit, there are a lot of features in it that we didn't even know we had and didn't utilize. For example, the budget prep software. We have such a small accounting staff. I mean, we had a staff of 2 for a long time. I think it was Dennis Hatch all by himself for a while, and then Tom and Dennis came in, and then it's grown. And as we've grown, we've started seeing stuff that we could use in the software. And 6 years ago, we said, wait, why aren't we using the budget prep option in the software? We actually have it in the financial system. So we're constantly looking for ways to make things better. And a lot of them already exist on the software that we're not utilizing.
So some of these older systems, how are they doing keeping up with security measures to make sure that, even though it might be an old system, we still need to have cutting edge security. So how's that going?
I would say great, because Matthias is in charge of it. He's on top of it. I mean, we could bring him here and he'll go on about it. And,
Yeah, he has, it's a multi-layer approach that he uses, and that those are all in place. I mean, fair warning, there's no guarantee on anything, but I think we have a pretty robust system.
Okay, great, thank you.
all right, so back to you, Jody.
Okay, so next steps, the budget calendar. Next month in April, finance will continue to incorporate the results into the operating budget document and continue to review, revise, and refine the operating budget. At the April 10th committee meeting, we will go over the capital budget requests, salary and benefit estimates, and any operating budget changes, including the water and cost estimates and revenue requirements. And then in May, the 5 and 10-year reserve projections will be completed, and management staff will revise and refine the first draft of the proposed budget. There will be 2 full board meetings. On the 7th, a draft budget update will be provided, and we will discuss board requested items. And then on the 21st, there will be a first review of the proposed budget.
So I don't know if this has been sent out for your calendars, but since we're doing a preliminary calendar and discussing it, the next meeting we have scheduled tentatively is April 10th. So that's what's sort of out there right now, but I'm sure Jennifer will work with you to get that set.
Yeah, let us know if there's any scheduling conflicts, and we'll schedule for a different day or time.
Was that the original date?
Yeah, April 10th.
Yeah, the finance committees during budget seasons was set to follow the finance calendar of when things are due from staff. And to give the finance staff enough time to input it and do their analysis.
The board meeting, it's a budget improvement.
June 4th, it'll be the next slide.
Yes, in June. Management staff will continue to revise and refine proposed budget draft, and the recommended budget will go to the full board for approval on June 4th.
So definitely let's see it 3 full times. And you'll be sick of me. Yeah, so yeah, we do have the new policy now, and you can actually do it.
Oh, okay, so I just wanted to remind you, last year we talked about pump zones were gonna be brought through with the budget, and that's not on this calendar yet. So with the pump zones, I still have to analyze, we've got rate increases from SCG. A couple months ago, and then I just gotta look at the volume that's been flowing through. The 9-10 zones that we had, and then that will come up with the pump zone rates.
Also, there's a new assembly bill that passed last year, so this year we'll be bringing together. The district is required to, at a public meeting, to kind of, or do the budget process, show vacancies and the different metrics on vacancies. So we're bringing that, and that's per, I don't know the assembly bill, but that was for assembly bill.
Staff vacancies?
Staff
Okay,
vacancies.
all right.
What was the genesis of that?
I don't know. A couple of the agencies are doing it this month, in March. So if we're under a threshold, so we'll just have to bring it to the board, I believe. But if you're over a certain threshold, then you have to have a public hearing.
Number of employees.
Number of employees, but a percentage vacancy. It's a percentage, and I have a chart that we've compiled, and actually Vallecitos has the least amount of turnover of the agencies that are compared, so that's a good news.
Most of our vacancies are usually just temporary until we fill them with that.
One, no, they're all vacancies except for people who are retired. They don't count in the number, and people who were fired. But anybody who left for another job, who quit for another job, so those are vacancies. I guess
Is there a threshold on who has to do this? By how many employees they have?
I don't know. Well, when we present it, we have more information, so. But you'll see that layered on with the budget process this year.
So now the budget process has several things that are incorporated, whether we've got the pump zones, we got the vacancies, and we've got the inducement resolutions.
Yeah.
So those 3 things will be presented all at the same time during the budget approval.
So bring 2 packets of peanuts, right?
Right.
Yeah. But you have a fun budget party, Rich.
We gotta use it.
All right. Is there any other questions on this item?
Well, thank you for your work on this.
Thanks for answering all the questions.
Thank you, Jerry.
Keep asking.
That's what we're here for, all the questions, and we hopefully we have, or can get all the answers. There you go, Mike. You want to create? I can.
I just, not to, it's that way. Okay, so for ready to OPEB funding status, so we do this annually for, oops,
I think you have to move the mouse
Oh.
over. There you go.
okay. So OPEB, other post-employment, benefits, that's basically the retiree health plan that we have. So OPEB, I think Wes mentioned earlier, is a closed system, or someone mentioned earlier, and it closed as of July 3rd, 2013. Currently at our 105-ish employees, only 44 employees are active in this, and there's about 28 retirees. The current retiree healthcare cost is about $425,000 annually. We have a CERT account. CERT is just basically our bank account. We put money into this. It's a California Employers Retirement Benefit Trust. So we put money in a trust starting about 13 years ago. And so let me go over some of the definitions with the OPEB. So TOL is a total OPEB liability. It's basically if you were to pay off your liability today, how much would it cost you? Get into that amount in a second. So it's basically the present value for the benefits of past service. Not unlike kind of like a PERS type liability. Your FNP, fiduciary net position, is basically just your bank account. It's the money that we have assets in our trust account, and that's that CERT account that we talked about. And then your net OPEB liability is just the difference between the two. How much do you owe? How much do you have? is our liability. The liability could be a positive surplus because we're overfunded, and by the way, we are right now. So we talked about the present value of future benefits today. So what is that amount? It's about $5.5 million for the current employees and our retirees. So the changes are based on number of employees. And all these actuarial assumptions, and it's not as easy with just life expectancy, interest rates, and healthcare costs. Actuarials get paid a lot of money to do all this analysis, so there's a lot of input into that, and it changes annually.
And that's, you're not doing those calculations, are you?
No.
Well, I would trust them if you
Yeah.
were.
Thank you.
But I just, so this is something we hire out.
Yeah, we hire.
Tables or.
No, we hire out to do this as part of our GASB 75 or 60.
I don't think you'd be good at it, Mike. I think that your stuff makes too much sense. Talk to an actuary, there's confusion.
Yes. So our trust balance, how much is in our bank account basically? It's 5.7 million. This is as of December 31st. When I said we started this back in 2012. Over that course of the 13 years, we've deposited about $4.25 million into this over that time period. Our net investment earnings is about $3 million in that over that time. So an average rate of return of about 5.4%. Pretty good. We have taken out withdrawals. So to pay for our retiree health, I told you it's about $400,000, $425,000 a year. We've taken withdrawals out of that of our trust money over the past 4 years of about $1.6 million. And then here's just a table. I really kind of want to focus on the last 3 years, but I wanted to give some history of what was happening. So the green line is our money that we have in the bank. It's our trust assets. And you'll see in 2021 to 22, it went down. That was the stock market kind of collapsed a little bit that time. Plus, it's the first year we've taken out money. The previous years, we've been building up money into that. You'll see the blue line has remained relatively steady. The blue line is expected to come down because what happens is as people roll off, as the retirees, there's, once you hit 65, yeah, once you roll off at 65, if we have an employee that quits and goes to another job that has benefits, even though they were eligible for the lifetime, for the OPEB, they're no longer eligible if they switch to a job that has benefits. So what I was saying is that $5.52 million is expected to go down every year. And I think actually that's it. Right now we have 5.7 million in assets, $5.5 million in liabilities. That gives us, as of December 31st, about a $200,000 net balance in there, or 103.6%.
So, Mike, since 2021, we've not had to fund the OPEB trust.
Correct.
And
We
we've
haven't.
only been withdrawn.
2018, actually.
Okay, thank you.
So this was our intention. If you go back to the last slide, from just a second. So here we say that we got the earnings and withdrawals. That's intentional. So in 2018, it was decided approved by the board, and decided to fully fund our trust so that we could fully fund it, and then from there, all retiree health is covered by the trust because it's now fully funded. So it saved the district about $425,000 a year that we were previously paying in expenses. Now we pay it, and then we actually get reimbursed from the trust for those expenses. So we're saving that money going forward. It was planned, budgeted, and it's been functioning accordingly, and we're still fully funded. So I think it's going well.
And this is one of those things we talked about last year. We mentioned about some of the things that we're doing to save money. And we've done this 5-6 years ago, but we forget to mention it every year. So it's one of those things that we probably should mention during our budget presentation, that we've done this and it saved X amount. We kind of just say, we said it 6 years ago and it's now kind of on autopilot. So
tell a customer.
yeah, we need to tell that story. The solar, we have to all the little things that we've done.
Yeah.
We need to keep bringing up, and it's, sometimes it's like we talk about it too much, but maybe we don't.
So not to correct you, Mike, the solar we need to add, but this we actually do put in the presentation, because we go through the labor savings when we actually cut back on employees, or labor savings there, the PERS contribution, which was your total savings. And this is a component of that, because we had that one part of the presentation where I showed that the millions of dollars annually that we're saving, they're actually increasing year to year. This is also, well, it probably won't, it could be increasing. It just depends if the costs increase.
So the net investment earnings figure, was that on total
It's gotta be, I would assume it's on the 12 of my count.
The 3 million or the percentage?
Yeah, the 3 million,
So that's just what we get our interest on the bank,
on the
basically,
whole.
on the whole amount,
Since
It's a-
inception.
yeah, since inception.
So that would be on the 4.26 deposits growing.
Yeah, it's the average daily balance. I have an actual spreadsheet that takes the average daily balance 365 days a year and it all calculates out.
So maybe looping in the P3 committee when we're talking about how we can tell these stories.
Mhm.
You know, maybe that's something that they could help push out a little bit.
Yeah, because I don't think we do a great job of kind of trumpeting our wins, because a lot of them are already baked into our numbers, and then when we initially do it, we trumpet it, and then we just kind of forget to mention it again. But those, we have hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars in savings accumulated that are already within our budget process that we just don't even mention.
I think it's a good idea to revisit those and, you know, remind folks, especially as we enter a new era where we are going to be asking our customers for more money
Affordability.
all the time.
Makes it that much more important to emphasize this. And
Yeah, what's scary is if we didn't do that, then the cost increase would be even higher.
Yeah, and that's it, that supports the point.
Yeah, especially when you look at other cities around us,
Mhm.
how they keep chasing that and deferring and things, and it just makes it a lot worse. So it was very wise 13 years ago, putting this money in a trust.
The next slide, I have a question, just so I want to make sure I understand. You know, the liability and the assets, we want those to be similar,
Yeah.
right? Because that means that we're not over
Over.
funding and over budgeting, and that we want those numbers to be pretty close.
Yeah, well, just for clarity though, we are no longer funding it. So
Okay,
we don't
thank
put
you.
money into this trust anymore. It just grows and shrinks based on our withdrawals in the market.
And for the most part, the interest earnings that we've had from year to year cover the amount of 425,000. Now, again, market conditions can swing, and one year you'd be great, and the next
so
year.
you project the blue bars, the liability to be pretty constant or going down.
Going down slowly.
What about the
The
asset?
assets should go down, they should,
Track.
they should track.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, from year to year, it might be a little bit different, but overall, it should track.
And it's not a bad thing for us to have a little bit more in there because we have access to it.
Mhm.
So we could,
You have restrictions on.
yeah,
The
we have
net
restrictions on what we can claim to withdraw, but each year we can at least withdraw the retirement. We can also do some like dental and vision, little things like that, but it gets really complicated.
I'm just wondering if it got out of whack, the ability to get it back close to the liability.
Yeah, so from a strategy, from a staffing standpoint, you know, if there's a 1 year or 2 year difference because the stock market changes, it would be probably something we just report on, but not necessarily take action. But if it got to the point where it's systemic, it's continuing,
Longer term.
yeah, then we'd have to take a look at it and come back to committee and board.
And see what our options were.
Mhm.
But I mean, overall, having our money in here, it's still our money, it's in a trust, it's in our name, and if it's earning more than it's supposed to, it's a good thing, right?
It's also earning higher rate than we can earn internally.
So if we're earning 4% internally and this is earning 7, we shouldn't be that upset about it. So,
And why is it returning 7?
this year they got 9.3. So PERS actually reported for 2023, I think, because they're usually 2 years behind.
This is under.
Well,
It's similar.
it's similar, but
Oh,
it's, the investments in here are actually a little bit more conservative than PERS. So you won't have as big a gain, but you won't have, we haven't had the negative. What a PERS, a negative 22% 1 year, we were probably negative, and that was that, a year, we were probably like -7.
That's
Why
why
PERS was like -20.
So you had huge returns in 21 and PERS had similar, and then we had a big loss. in
Are
22.
these investment instruments that are only available to this program?
They're,
I assume they're restricted similar to us.
Yeah.
They must have government regulation where they can only, not as restricted as ours, obviously, because most of ours end up being 4.5% tax.
Wes, the other question I think I have is it's because of it's a trust liability for certain things, it falls into a different, like it's.
Yeah.
It's for medical,
Eligible
it's for
different
eligible for medical, yeah.
But somewhere like our 457 plan, they have stuff, like we've got approved investments that you can put in our 457, so we went through the whole library of what we could actually include in our 457. They're gonna have vehicles like that, that have to be approved in this program.
knows we can't just use it for everything. Alright,
Okay, so. If there are no more questions on the OPEB, next item is the sewer revenue on the tax roll. I won't go through the whole thing again. You may remember that during the last meeting we had, we talked about rate increases from the water authority basically causing, we're gonna be facing pretty large rate increases, and one of the few benefits we can give to our customers is maybe, break up their water bill and delay the payment for sewer. So if we're to take it off of their water bill and put it on the tax roll, customers don't have to pay their sewer bill for 6 months, and they pay it to the county instead of to us. So they get a smaller bill from us overall. So not a huge benefit, but actually at least a small benefit that we have the ability to do. And then that would be the sewer revenue tax roll. We have approximately 17,500 single family residential accounts. They have a fixed rate for sewer that's 38.99. So it's really simple, pretty simple for us.
Like 240 every 6 months.
really quick, does that include IDA or no?
No, it's not.
No, okay, that's outside of.
IDA is already on the tax roll. There's another 2,000 accounts or so that are on their IDA, but they're sewer accounts that are not our water accounts. They're just our sewer customers. So
The payments are 4 months of program.
Yeah.
Yeah, December and April.
Couple $100 every.
Yeah,
For all
that's
those
what
two
we-
paying.
Yeah.
200.
Full change, yeah.
so these are the accounts that would be simplest for us just to send over to the county. Would say here's 17,500. We have other customers that are based on flow, number of students, seats, things like that, but they change, they're difficult for us to calculate and send. So this is just the simplest way for us to say, here's a list of 17,530, and then parcel numbers, addresses, so on and so forth. And then the county just includes them on the tax roll, and we no longer bill those customers. We've done the research, and the cost to do it is worth mentioning. It's only 10 cents per parcel. So the county is going to do this for very little fees, like, $1,700. And the status, the last meeting we talked about, we were really just looking at two more things. We wanted to see if, the delay in the payments would be financially sustainable for us. If we're causing any issues with us having the sewer revenue, not every month, only having it, 2-3 times a year versus every month. And we've looked at that, we looked at our cash forecast and determined that we would be able to work with that, and it shouldn't be that difficult. There's a little administrative work, but it's nothing that would be overly burdensome. That's the cash management reviewed. And then lastly, the parcel information, which is the first one I skipped over. This was a big one. We wanted to make sure there was a way that we could verify. We have our parcels in our billing system, but it's put in there at some point and it's never really confirmed 100% because we don't use the parcels for much. So the first step on this was to say, okay, can we get an accurate parcel listing before we do this? Because that's what the county needs, put it on the tax roll. So we started looking at what was in GIS, we looked at what was in North Star, we started comparing the two lists, and really we just kind of came to the conclusion, like, the easiest, if the county could just give us a dump of our actual parcels. I mean, they're giving us our 1% property tax, they must have a list of our parcels. So we reached out to them, and long story long, they confirmed that they can send it to us, and they'll only charge us $125 for the list. So we'll take that list, compare it to ours, make sure we've got everything up to date, so we'll have a full and complete list before we transition to this product.
It'll make our database cleaner also.
Who's reconciling that?
This guy.
When-
Mike and Thomas have really spearheaded the effort to work on that. They've been
Thomas
working
works
together.
right.
Can AI do that for you?
Potentially, but probably not now. Yeah,
I believe that.
actual intelligence.
Like it sure can.
Jason's gonna use it.
Yes, yeah. All right, let's stay on.
So then the last item to be resolved as far as the sewer and the tax roll is just we wanted to get more information from other entities. So we reached out to some organizations actually doing it already to ask if they had any issues, any challenges, what their experiences were. And we got one of the questions we really had was during the year, if you add a new customer, we can only send our parcel list to the county once a year, right? We send it in July, it goes to the whole process where we say we're approving the method of collection, and then here's the list of collecting, and then it actually goes to the tax roll once a year. What if we get new customers during the year? then we can't send them on tax roll, so we wanted to ask other agencies what they do in that case. Our first thought was, we would just bill them normally, so that customer would actually get a sewer bill every month. And then when they were, the following year, we would put them on the tax roll, they no longer get a sewer bill. Our system has the capability, we're doing it now, so newer customers would just get the 39 on their water bill. Next year, they'll be on the tax roll, and that seems to be what's actually happening. So we got a response from Lebanon, and I think that's what they're doing. They may be finding a way to get it. That's what we wanted to ask them, and I think they might be putting it on escrow. So we got the response from them.
That's the other, they put on escrow and they get seeded in escrow, we get paid through the escrow account when they close on the house.
Yeah, I moved into OMWD area like in 2003, and I think I remember on the HUD or whatever that thing's called, there was a spot on there for sewer 4 months, and I paid it.
There's probably a way that you could figure out when most people move. I would guess it's during summer, and then make sure that you time it so that you have the least amount of catch-up work.
Well, it's only the initial, because once it's in the parcel, then whoever takes the property tax will always be upset, so it's only when a brand new unit is built. And it gets put into the system.
Oh, it stays with the parcel.
It stays with the parcel.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes. So there won't be many of them anyway, so it's not a huge complication, and we have options to handle it, so we know that it can be done. So that's really the results of the sewer revenue and tax roll sort of process. Next steps are bringing it to the full board. Basically, we're looking for support from the committee if this is something that you want to pursue and bring to the full board. If that's the case, then we'll decide on the meeting and set that up.
And before we go to that, so I was in a meeting that went long, the man meeting at Waterbury, and then give you our 101 update of it. But there's a lot of rate discussion, budget discussion at the water authority. And one of the things, the water authority has assumed about a 13% rate increase from Met. But Met's increase is gonna come in at closer to 20 to 25%. So then with the water authority's increase right now, that the number that's out there is 18%, understanding it's still have a lot to go to, but that doesn't include the difference in Met's increase. Now, that Met increase going from 13 to 25% doesn't all hit the water authority 100%, so I don't really know what the water authority's new number will be. But 20 to 24% may be realistic. So for this year, with no promises the year after, now this is mainly being driven by the BDC, the peripheral canal job, Met's pure water job, LA's pure water job, and Met's forecasting of water sales that are increasing to a high amount instead of the water authority saying we are decreasing sales.
So they're just now starting to put in these huge capital projects
Well, they're,
as far as
yeah, so
charging points.
so what Met agreed to with support from the state with Newsom is adding 3 to 4%, about 3%. I actually have notes and I'll go over them with you. But you know, so we're looking
50
at,
billion
yeah,
on these various projects.
yeah, it's gonna be, the number's more 62 point something billion between all
It's
jobs.
just 21 is the single tunnel.
So, and the question that we had as managers is with the only way Met could justify is increased water sales. So if that increased water sales doesn't happen, that compounds the problem. And we don't believe, because, and this is deja vu of the managers' meetings with the water authority from 5 years ago, where the GM said your water sales are decreasing and water authority said, no, they're increasing. Because if you show it decreasing, we have to do big rate increases. So that's what
They decreased and had big rate increase.
well, yeah. So, but if you say increase, you only need 2% or 4%. But when they decrease, now you have to catch up and now you're looking at 20%. So what we're worried about from a customer reliability standpoint is those are gonna get one way or another passed through because Vallecitos doesn't have the coffers to absorb that when it's 72% of our costs. So one of the things that is kind of a neutral, but for consideration is at the end of the day, we collect the same amount of money roughly. I know there's a difference in investments, but roughly we collect the same amount of money, whether we put on the tax roll or not. But for some of our most vulnerable customers, the renters, it will reduce their bill, but their bill will immediately, within a couple of years, if it does go through that way, come right back up to what it is today. So this will reprieve them to a neutral standpoint within a couple of years. So, but if we don't, then it's gonna be that percentage higher. Yeah, $40
A
higher.
related question, last year the water authority offered a discount for prepaying.
But we took advantage of that.
We did,
Yeah.
how much should we say? Like 80,000 or
Yeah,
something?
something like that.
Like 120, yeah, somewhere 80 to 120,000, depending on the.
Remember if we had.
The rate of return, yeah, that's something, yeah, high and low, yeah, we did it in, but they need to cash funds, so there's no guarantee that they'll do that again. So, because water authority is looking at going after debt financing in 2026, they can't afford to pay go. So,
We were just talking about municipal bonds not being tax exempt anymore either. I hope that doesn't happen. That can have a big impact on.
Yep.
I just heard.
Borrowing costs.
Well, their rating got, stayed the same, but the outlook went from stable to,
Whatever they call it.
yeah, what's below stable, to concerned, or whatever.
Week.
Stable, to, well, it went from stable outlook to not stable outlook, whatever, it is, but they kept it the same.
It's like concerned
But-
or more guarded or something, I can't remember the.
It's, Lisa Marie used it today in our meeting, but then they still have Fitch coming possibly later this year. So they're not out of the wood. That was S&P, I believe, or I could be getting those backwards. So this will essentially allow some reprieve on a monthly basis for customers, but we have to be very transparent about it, because at the end of the day, we're still collecting the same amount of money. And you know, I mean.
Yeah,
there
just
may-
don't want it to appear we're hiding.
No,
something.
no.
I think it's important for us to explain what is happening. Some people will be very interested and other people will just, celebrate that their bill was there.
Yep.
But I think as long as we're transparent and we explain it. And I think, it goes in both directions. Some people will appreciate that our most vulnerable customers will have a better reprieve. Other people will think that they really want to understand, why some people are getting more reprieve than not others. So we have to explain the arrangements in that way so that everyone understands fully what's happening.
Well, if the committee supports it, go to the board, and then if the board supports it, one of the first things that the financing has to do is actually do the mechanism to make this happen. But on the flip side, Chris's team will be working with the P3 coming back to the board on our outreach on this. So there will be many touch points on the process, and those will be parallel processes if the board elects to move forward with this.
Is there potential for putting other fixed charges? On the tax roll?
I think so. It would be something we could look into. So this is just our sort of first step. We're like, okay, what's the easiest thing to do? What's low hanging fruit? And we've got a sewer revenue, 30 and
What other things could you potentially?
Ready to serve.
Ready to serve, yeah.
That'd be the next one, because if it's not a variable, then it's not what's the term, not agri-oriented, is it agri-oriented? The charge of net, what's the agri-oriented? So it's a different bucket, then it has to go through a vote.
Yeah.
Instead of a public hearing, but if it's a fixed charge, then we have a lot more leeway with it. So, and we only have a couple fixed charges, right? We only have ready to serve and the sewer.
Yeah, that would be,
Everything else is commodity.
we'll have to figure out how to work with our January rate increases too.
But one of the things that's fairly normal is a lot of agencies do charge their sewer on the tax roll, so it's not, I know, well, we are sending water bills because there's a use component to that, so.
So we actually should be transparent about the fact that homeowners are actually gonna suffer a little bit from this, because as James mentioned, renters get the benefits. They're getting the actual water bill. The homeowners are gonna be paying the sewer portion of the water bill now, which is something new, right? So if you have renters, they're gonna have, we should make sure we mention that if you have renters, your tax bill is going up, you probably need to find a way to pass that on to your renters.
Just get passed through the renter.
It may, on the HCD website, there's an affordability index, and what it shows is if the cost of buying that property and renting it compared to the rents. And usually there's a percentage that it stays in, and I don't remember what it is. But right now, because the rents are so high, the $400+ that we put on it doesn't even move the needle on that affordability index. So in other words, not everybody, because everybody's in a different situation, but from, according to HCD, the overall rents in our area far outpace the cost of owning and operating those rentals. So it should be absorbed, but you're right, individual homeowners could do different things.
I think that that's not really a topic for this meeting, like, we can't really prescribe that, but I agree, we need to approach the committee committee. I'm supportive of moving this to the board and.
So we'll start working on from staff side, bring it to a future board meeting, and we're ready. We'll real action on it. There will be some work that staff has to put together, so it won't necessarily be the next meeting, but it'll be coming up.
Thank you for all of your work. Great job.
Thank you.
That's all we have for today.
Anything
How's it
else?
looking?
Okay.
Yeah.
No, okay, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Do you have a minute?